Minasan, konnichiwa. So we'll now the overview to topic 27, One Day Isang Araw. Minasan, hajime masho. So for the main objective of this topic is to rediscover the importance of folk tales by giving an image of how people lived a long time ago and to realize that how one views the differences and similarities between Filipino and Japanese folktales content and ending reflecting one's background, the values and beliefs, customs and traditions that one possesses as a Filipino or a Japanese. Also, in this topic, the students will experience reading a story in simple Japanese and to develop skills in guessing the meaning of unfamiliar words and expressions by analyzing pictures and context clues. For the skills to be developed in this topic, first, students can read a Japanese folktale written in easy Japanese. Second, they could understand the story of Orashima Taro, which is one of the famous folktales in Japan. They can do presentations by using limited Japanese and expecting the end of the story. And lastly, they can observe the difference of Filipino and Japanese folktales to point out. So, for the session outline of this topic, sessions 1 and 2 is focused on reading the folktale in Japanese language, and session 3 is on making the original ending for the folktale of Urashima Taro, which they will be presenting in session 4. Then for session 5, that would be the time that they are going to read the original ending of the folktale in Japanese language. And lastly, on session 6 would be the vocabulary building and mind map. So, based on the session outline, students could read and analyze the Urashima Taro folktale. Students could brainstorm how to end the story with their group mates and also practice their own presentation based on their making of the ending of the story. Then they'll be able to share the ideas how folktales differ in Japan and the Philippines and discuss what could be the possible factors among the differences or its similarities. They'll be able to present their version of the ending of the folktale and will be able to critique other groups' work and to review the new expressions and take the Nihongo review quiz at the last session of this topic. For the language part, students can be able to read a famous folktale in Japan using simple Japanese and to do their presentation in simple Japanese. So, for session Ichi, the objectives of the session first, they'll be able to talk about the importance of reading folktales, read a Japanese folktale in simple Japanese, and learn reading strategies like guessing the meaning of some words related to the story through picture and context clues. Nihongo to be learned. First, they'll be able to read a Japanese folktale and they can guess the meaning of some words related to the story to be read in this session through context clues. For this session, since this is session 1, a lot of vocabulary and expressions would be introduced, such as mura, which is village, umi, which means sea, kame, which is turtle, sakana, meaning is fish, tsuri, imiwa, fishing, sango, imiwa, corals, imashita, imiwa, said, agemashita, imiwa, gave, Kairimashita, imi wa went home. Ikimashita, imi wa went. Kikoimashita, imi wa heard. Hairimashita, imi wa entered. Tsukimashita, imi wa arrived. And Annai shimas meaning show around. So if you have noticed, most of the verbs that are introduced in session 1 are in past tense. So these verbs are in past tense since this is used in a folk tale and supposedly the events in a folk tale happened a long, long time ago or in the past. for the expressions introduced in session 1. So, Mukashi Mukashi Imiwa a long time ago. Aruhi Imiwa one day. Ijimetewa Ikinai. It's bad to bully others. And for the last expression, Kitewa Ikinai Imiwa. You shouldn't come here anymore. Or you're not allowed to come here anymore. So for the materials to be used in this topic, so you need pictures that are related to the story, referring to the things and characters that are mentioned in the folktale Orashimataro Ichito ni Pato, then flashcards of the words that are related to the folktale. So these are the names of the things and characters mentioned in part Ichi and Ni. The picture worksheet of Orashimataro Ichito ni Pato, and the hiragana and katakana were story sheets of the parts ichi and ni of the folktale. So for the topic session outline rather, so you have the topic introduction, which is started with the updating of their Gambaro list since this is already a new topic. Then we will have the sharing on folktale reading and its importance. So you could ask your students whether they know what a folktale is, whether they have read a folktale before or are they currently reading one. So what are the examples of folktales that they have read or they know, whether it's from the Philippines, from Japan, or from other countries. Then for the vocabulary building part, so you may have something like this. So you will present the students with pictures of the things that you could see in the story. Then you will remind them that these pictures are arranged according to the hiragana or katakana order. A, I, U, E, O, Ka, Ki, Ku, Ke, Ko, and so on. So they have to arrange the words on the flashcards or as flash in the screen according to the meaning or the reading of these pictures in Japanese. So you have the picture first of the sea, the turtle, and so on. So you have the words flashed: sakana, sango, tsuri, mura, umi, and kame. Again, you have to emphasize to the students that these pictures are arranged in hiragana and katakana or katakana order so that they'll have an idea that this picture is read like this and like that for them to easily identify. So for the answers, you have first one is umi, kame, sakana, sango, tsuri, and mura. Then you will also introduce the characters in the story mentioned in the first part and second part of the Urashimataro folktale. So you'll have Urashimataro and the Kodomo Tachi. Then after you had introduced the new words, the plot, and the characters of the story, we will have the top-down reading of the folktale. So when you say top-down, so that's the time we're going to use the worksheet that has the pictures of the events in the folktale and the ones or the parts of the story that are written in hiragana and katakana, and they're going to match it out. So they could use their prior knowledge on the terms and expressions and match it with the pictures as seen on the events in the folktale. And from this worksheet, they are able to learn the new expressions introduced in the story, such as mukashi mukashi, aruhi, ijimete wa ikenai, kite wa ikenai. And of course, this top-down reading method or technique will be used for both part ichi and ni of the folktale. So after the students would pair the readings, the hiragana and katakana readings of the story with its corresponding picture. The teacher would verify whether it's correct or not, introduce and recall the expressions learned, and do it also for the second part of the folktale. And of course, every session would end with a reflection. So for session ni, its objective is that students would be able to read the Japanese folktale in simple Japanese and learn reading strategies like guessing the meaning of some words related to the story through pictures and context clues, same as what they had done in session Ichi. So Nihongo to be learned can read a Japanese folktale. So they're going to read the next part of the Urashima Taro folktale. And they can guess the meaning of some words related to the story to be read through context clues. So for the vocabulary part of this session, Ichiban, Senaka, Imiwa, back. Otohime-sama, Imiwa, princess. And lastly, Tamatebako, Imiwa, casket. So for the expressions that they would encounter in this session, first, Tanoshinde kudasai, Imiwa, please enjoy. Next one would be Tachimashita, Imiwa, time has passed by. Next expression would be Omoida shimashita, Imiwa, remembered. Next, Tanoshikatta, Imiwa, it was fun. Sige, kairitai, Imiwa, I want to go home. Next, ite kudasai, Imiwa, please stay. Next expression, aitai, Imiwa, I miss someone. Next, akete wa ikemasen, meaning it's prohibited to be opened. And for the last expression, norimashita, which has the English meaning rora suni norimashita. Then the materials to be used in this session. First, the pictures that we had used in session Ichi. Then, flashcards of words that are related to the story used in session Ichimo for the review. Next, picture worksheet of Orashimataro part sang. Then the story sheets in hiragana and katakana of part sang of the folktale. And lastly, the blank story sheets for writing an original ending of the folktale. So for the session outline of session ni, first it would begin with the introduction. So the students would be recalling the part ichi and ni of the folktale through a summary. Next is the reading part. So the students would discover or they are going to unlock the words that they would encounter in the part son of the folktale, still using the same method wherein the teacher would be presenting pictures and the students would match each picture with the Nihongo word that corresponds to it. And for the last part would be the reflection. So for session song of topic 27, its session objectives. First, the students will compose their own story ending for the Japanese folk tale using some Japanese words that they already know, and they will work with their group mates to finish the task. Nihongo to be learned, they can apply Japanese words and expressions learned in entry by composing their own ending for the Japanese folk tale in this topic. So the session outline of session 3. First, is the introduction wherein the students will summarize parts ichi, ni, and san of the folktale. Then for the group work, so the teacher would ask the students to go to their groups and they're going to make their own ending of the folktale based on what had happened from Pato Ichikara Saan pato made. So the students are to be graded using a sample criteria such as originality or uniqueness of the ending of their story or folktale, their effort to use Nihongo expressions during the presentation, and the students will present their original ending in a clear and modulated voice. So the students could have options on how to present their own ending. First, they will have the storytelling part, wherein they could prepare some pictures or puppets and they will decide who will narrate the ending of their story, and the others would have a role. And for the second one, they will be doing the role play or the nigikiri. So they're going to decide who will be playing this character and that character, and they're going to present the original end. So they will be given time to prepare for their presentation of the original ending, and this session would eventually end with a reflection. For session yung objective, so the students will present their own ending of the folktale Orashimataro using the simple Japanese word they have already learned in entry, as well as to assess and appreciate the various ideas presented by the other groups. Nihongo to be learned, they can present their own original ending of the story Orashimataro, and they can assess and show appreciation of other people's presentation by giving feedbacks and comments. Session outline of session yon. So that first would be the introduction part. So recall of the expressions that they have learned since session Ichi, and recap of what happened in the folktale from session Ichi, which discuss about part Ichi and Ni, and session Ni, which discussed or where they tackled part San. Then they'll be given time to prepare for their presentation of their own ending. Then the presentation proper. So during the preparation time, the teacher would remind the students to give the introduction first in Japanese before they're going to start their presentation. So sample introduction. Konnichiwa, kore kara watashi tachi no original no Orashimataro no ending ne tsuite happyo shimasu. Member wa A さんと B さんと C さんと私です。Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Then they're going to start their presentation. So while the other group would be presenting, the remaining groups who are listening are asked to assess the group presenting in front and write their comments and impressions in Ego, Filipino, or Nihongo about the presentation on a provided evaluation sheet wherein it is to be prepared by the teacher. So, for example, I have a sample rubric here that you could use during the presentation. So, your turn. So, the students would be graded according to four levels: outstanding achievement, commendable achievement, some achievement, and minimal achievement on the following factors: first, originality and content; second, loudness and clarity of voice; then, spoken Nihongo usage; the group collaboration, and creativity in their presentation. So if you're going to use a rubric for this presentation task of the students will be also guided on how they are going to greet their classmates, since indicators or observable indicators are under each level of achievement. So they will not just grade, for instance, for the loudness and clarity, they're just going to grade their classmate one because probably they have an enemy in that group, or they're going to grade that group five because all of the members of that group are their friends. So with using a rubric, it would be clear to the students why they are rated outstanding achievement for this criteria, and so on and so forth. Also, this would be easier for the students to check or pinpoint on what part they need to improve for their next performances in their Nihongo classes. And after the presentation, of course, would be the reflection part for this session. For session go of topic ni Junana, the objective, so the students are able to comprehend the mainstream version story of Orochimaru and compare it to the usual ending of Filipino folk tales. Second, students are able to build their self-confidence and fluency in reading a part of Orochimaru folktale in Japanese scripts. Nihongo to be learned, so they can read the ending of Orochimaru in simple Japanese. They can express their own feeling using simple Japanese word. And lastly, they can read some parts of Orochimaru folktale with fluency. So for session go, vocabulary, kemuri. Kemuri wa imi de smoke. Then expressions that would be encountered in this session. Arimasen, meaning nothing. Imasen, imi wa not there or not present. Shitemasu ka? Imi wa do you know? Name of the person. Then Sanbyaku nen mai, meaning 300 years ago. And second to the last expression, kaite kimasen deshita. Imi wa did not return or go home. And for the last expression, akemashita. Imi wa open. Materials to be used for this session. So the picture worksheet of Orochimaru part yon. Story sheets in hiragana and katakana of part yon of the folktale. And the complete copy of the folktale for parts ichikara yon made for the practice reading. So, yomo o renshu shimasho. Hi. So, outline of session 5. So, it would be starting with an introduction. Then, for the pair work, so by pair, students would arrange the part 4 or the last part of the folk tale. Then, a discussion part would follow after verifying the arrangement of the parts or the sequence of the parts of part 4 of the folk tale. So, for the discussion part, the students would compare Philippine and Japanese folk tales. So, points to be realized. So, we need to emphasize on the backgrounds of the values, beliefs, customs, and traditions that Japanese and Filipinos have that would affect or influence the ending and content of our folk tales. At the same time, we could present other folk tales with its synopsis or summaries to the students for reference or for other comparison references. Then, what would follow would be the choral reading Renshu. So, before we proceed to the practice of the choral reading, we will give the students the definition or overview of what a choral reading is. So it is an activity wherein the participants are reading aloud in unison. So this would provide them the opportunity to practice and receive support from their group mates, especially for those who are still having difficulty or having less confidence in reading the text, especially that the text that they're going to read are in kana or hiragana and katakana. So, after that one would be the practice or the renshu for the choral reading. And this session would end with our reflection. But wait, there's more. There is an assignment part to this session wherein they are going to have their practice of the reading of the Orashimataro folktale at home with their assigned parts so that they could prepare for the choral reading presentation next session, which is on session Roku. So this would be the last session of this topic with its objectives. So first, the students would be able to manage complexity and self-direction by building their self-confidence and fluency in reading a part of the Orashimataro folktale in Japanese script. So it's not that all of them would read the parts all together. So they could assign parts to each member of the group or by pair or by trio so that they could familiarize and they'll be able to confidently read that part since it's not that long from the start till the end. Next, use a word map to recall the words and expressions learned not only in this topic, but in all the topics learned so far, and by being able to connect and relate them to each other through their meaning, usage, and others. And for the last one, reflect on one's learning and by being able to monitor one's progress. So, session outline of the session 6 would follow after the can do. So the students would be able to perform the choral reading with their group mates, connect and co-reference related words and expressions learned so far. So since this is already a higher topic, so it does not mean that they are going to forsake and forget what they've learned since topic 1. So they could relate now terms that they've learned in this topic going back to the previous topics that they have learned since they started learning Nihongo. So for the outline of session 6, first would be the choral reading. So it's up to the teacher whether they will be drawing by lots, they will have it by bato-bato pick or rock, paper, scissors, or they'll have the snake ladder system to determine which whose group would go first. After the choral reading, you have Fukushu Ichi. So, Fukushu wa Egode is review. So first review part is their review quiz, of course. So this would help us assess whether the students have learned and retained what they have learned in this topic. And Fukushuni is the word map or the Goy map. So this is the part wherein the students could relate the new learned vocabulary and expressions to the previously learned expressions, words in this language or Nihongo. And for the last part, of course, of this session is the reflection. So, what are some of the challenges when you're going to teach this topic? So, first is the vocabulary and expression overload. Yes, especially in session Ichi and Ni, there are a lot of new words that the students would encounter. So one good thing that you could do to cope with this difficulty is pairing the new expressions, the new words with pictures, or for the expressions particularly since these are verbs, you could add actions so that the students could easily remember. So I had tried this one before in my previous grade 10 batch pre-pandemic, and they find it easy to remember if you are going to pair an action with the expression so they could easily remember that one. Another thing is that the text of the Orashima Taro folktale is in kana. So even though they are already grade 10 students, some of them might interchange the readings of the hiragana and katakana characters. So it's best that before the session proper, you will have a hiragana or katakana review before you will let them read the text. Also, you could ease the introduction of this folk tale by letting the students view a video of the narration of this folk tale. So there are a lot of videos in YouTube for your reference. So the students would find it more enticing to see this folktale in video than just merely reading it. So they will have a visualization of the events, the plot of the folktale if they could have a video presentation of the or they could see a video of the narration of this story. Also, one difficulty, or I think not difficulty, but challenge that I encountered in teaching this topic is during the session 5, wherein they will have their presentation. So, since our students are the cream of the crop of the batch, so they would not settle for less in their presentation. So, even though you will say that this is not part of your performance task, but they do not want to give a mediocre presentation for their choral reading, and of course also in the in the session wherein they're going to have their original ending. So they will have all the props, all the backdrops, everything for their presentation, which would really take time if you are going to give in to their request. So probably you could have the original ending part of the story presented. Probably you could present that one, have them present that one at the end of the topic. So you're going to ask for the storyline of the original ending on its assigned session, then you will have their presentation proper at the end of the topic. If you intend it to be graded as a performance task, since it is half of the percentage of their grade computation. So since the preparation for this one would really take time. Also, another challenge in this topic most likely is whether you're going to reach on this topic or not. So in the last two school years before pandemic, I had reached to the end of topic 28, but last year I only finished until topic 27 due to time constraints. So it's not a pressure whether you're going to finish this topic or not. Ja, minasan, thank you for listening to the session and topic overview of One Day Isang Araw. And I hope you're now enlightened on how you're going to teach this topic in the near future. Ja, sensei tachi, gambate kudasai.